We're about to begin the services for Mrs. Yenta Tokman. Just as a gentle reminder for those of you present in the chapel, if you have a cell phone with you, just place it in the silent mode or turn it off completely. Thank you. We also welcome everyone who is online viewing the service as well. The service will be conducted by Rabbi Adam Shalom.
Welcome. We are here to say goodbye to Yenta Tokman. The folder may say Yenta, but she was never Yenta. She was always Yeva, even on her diploma, it was Yeva. In many ways, it's not a deep tragedy when someone dies at age 91, with a loving family, having experienced children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We are sad that she is gone, and we appreciate even more who she was while she was here. But we are not angry at the universe for the injustice of taking her from us at age 91. We might be sad about little losses over the years, the opportunities missed, the limitations that she dealt with. Her life certainly had its ups and its downs, but she was someone who wanted joy in life. She wanted to be happy and to have other people be happy. She wanted to laugh. She wanted to laugh with other people. I want to begin this celebration of Yeva's life with a poem in Yiddish. It's a Jewish language that Yeva knew from her childhood, and it might have even given her an advantage in her German classes as a student and later learning to become a German language teacher. This is a short poem by Yankov Gladstein that speaks about how to face challenges, something that she also learned in her life. I'll read the poem first in Yiddish and then in English. Vermess sich nicht einer allein gegen der volle Nacht. Sie wird sich verscheuden mit zu viel Chochma. Ihre kleinen Schrecken in dein Stub seien euch über deine Kreuches. Sie reden mit jeder Schritt und Tripp. Kleib sich zu akrischke Nacht. Sei klein in ihr, wohn in ihr, unpachert, unübergedigter, mit Chaläumes. Do not contend alone with total night. It is too wise. Even its faint alarms in your small room are far too much for you. They speak with every squeak and drip. Pick but a small piece of night. Squeeze into it. Make it your home. Set fear aside. Be blanketed with dreams. Yeva could have given in to total night many times, but she never did. She set fear aside, and she found her joys and her sense of meaning with her family. I had the chance to speak with Yeva's family yesterday evening about her life, about the kind of person that she was. And as I think about her life, I'm reminded of those Matryoshka dolls. The littlest doll is in the middle, and the larger dolls grow around them and close around them to enclose them. In many ways, I think all of us, each person, is like a Matryoshka doll, with our childhood, our youth, our adulthood, our maturity, each covering up what was there before, but it's all in there. It all makes us who we are today. And each stage, each doll, each layer offers its own lesson that we carry with us for the rest of our lives. After all, Yeva was a teacher for so many years. For her, the smallest doll in the middle was a child with a challenging childhood. She was born in May of 1930, on May 2nd, in a small town in Ukraine near Odessa. Her mother was a seamstress, and her father worked in a factory. Her father was an observant religious Jew, even going so far as to try to keep kosher, which was a real challenge in the Soviet Union. Sometimes he would buy his own chickens and travel for miles to find someone to slaughter them correctly. And sometimes he went without food if he could not find something kosher to eat. Yeva herself was not that observant, and he didn't insist on it for her because it was almost a crime to be that religious in that time and place. He said, "I'll pray on your behalf. You be safe. You be like everyone else." Yeva lived with her older brother Rudolf, but everything changed in 1941 with the arrival of the invading German and the Romanian Allied armies. She was only 11, and German planes were bombing the city and the seaport during a panicked evacuation, which could only be by boat. The parents were desperate to save their children, and sometimes they would throw them into the boats without the parents to get them to safety. And that was her experience too. Traveling on boat and freight train through bombings and overcrowding, never enough food, always hungry, always cold. Yeva wound up in Tajikistan, in a city which was then called Stalinabad, but before Stalin, and today it's called Dushanbe. But the tragedy of her life wasn't over yet. During that evacuation, her mother was bitten by a dog, which led to a terrible death from disease. Yeva wound up being cared for a time by her aunt. She was only 12 years old to lose her mother and to face all that tragedy. What lesson did that little girl learn from all that suffering? What was the core of the person Yeva would become? There's an early rabbinic saying that says that all people should be ohev shalom v'rodef shalom, love peace and chase after peace. From that war, Yeva became a peacemaker. From her suffering, she learned to want other people to be happy. From her tears, she wanted others to have joy. The end of the war in her 15th year meant a new stage in life, another Matrushka layer. Yeva went back to school, where she always worked very hard to get straight A's. She also went to work because she had to. She stayed in Dushanbe. There really was no one left in Odessa to go back to. And her older brother, Rudolf, who was a talented artist, won a prize and was chosen to study art in Leningrad, of course, today St. Petersburg. And eventually he became a professional artist. You can actually see an example of his work to my right. It is a portrait of her that he painted many years later. But he did not get there all by himself. While he was in school, Yeva worked extra hard, in addition to her hard studies, to support him, even rationing her own food so she could have some food to send to him. As her daughter Alla put it, Yeva never thought about herself. Through her whole life, she was very selfless and modest, putting her needs second and her desires to help her family first. Another lesson that became a deep part of who she was. That schooling paid off. Yeva became a pharmacist, helping others be cured. In this stage of her life, becoming an adult, she also met and married Victor in 1955, with her daughters Alla and then Nella soon to follow. Initially, Yeva was dating a friend of Victor's, but that friend got called away for work somewhere else, and so she connected with him instead. They had a very special relationship. He was also very smart and very educated. He was an engineer who had come to Dushanbe to work in a special factory. His intelligence is part of what made her fall in love with him. When they were dating, she would actually go out to the library at night to look up information so she would have something interesting to say in conversation the next day with him. It was always sort of a one-upman's of who has something new to say and new information to share. She always looked up to him. It was clear to everyone when he would write poetry, and she would appreciate the poetry, even delivering the poetry when visitors came. Now, they were very different people. Victor had very strong opinions, and he would argue, sometimes even loudly, while Yeva was always the quiet peacemaker. She took off the hard edges, the sharp corners of what Victor had to say. Even though they were both Jewish, he didn't know Yiddish, but she did. And so if they went to a Yiddish comedy show, for example, everyone would laugh at a certain moment, except for Victor. And then she would explain it to him, and then he would laugh a few seconds later. Even in their later life in the United States, they enjoyed going together to cultural events at Jewish community centers and holiday programs for Hanukkah and other holidays. Now, Victor worried about her. He worried about her work as a pharmacist. First, he wanted her to continue her education and to train for a different job, but he was also worried because working as a pharmacist, if you were late at night at work, it meant that the drug addicts and other people would come up to you and try to force you to give them what they needed. Now, we know that she loved learning her whole life, and so she went back to school to become a teacher. She had studied German language in school, and she already knew Yiddish, so that probably helped, and so she became a German teacher for many, many years. And even later in her life, when she moved to America, she studied her English just as hard, worrying about her tests and quizzes, always wanting straight A's. Her whole life, she loved reading and watching movies and plays, experiencing what life had to teach her. But it's the next layer of the Matrushka that helped define Yeva so well. It was her role as a mother. As Alla said to me, she was a very dedicated mother, perhaps too much at times. Her life was her children, especially helping her younger daughter Nella, who faced many challenges from her birth. Today we might call them learning or developmental disabilities, but in the Soviet Union in the 1950s and 60s, the education system did not care. It is not an exaggeration to say that Yeva's life was dedicated to caring for Nella, even as she also loved and respected Alla very much. Yeva even changed her teaching schedule so she would teach at night, and that meant she would be available for daytime care and support for her daughter Nella. Schools at that time in that place had no special programs for students with special needs, and it was only because of Yeva's steadfast work and support that Nella finished her schooling. She lived with Victor and Yeva even as an adult well into Yeva's 80s, until the physical limits of getting older became a problem. And yet again, Yeva learned a lesson from this too. If your life is difficult, if you face challenges, when you get a chance to laugh, make the most of every chance to laugh. One of the best memories that her family shared with me is her laugh. It's a laugh that encouraged other people to laugh. Perhaps it was a relief because of her stressful life of caregiving, but her face would light up, and she was full of life when she was laughing with other people. She loved jokes. Every visit, she would ask, "Do you have a new joke to tell me? Tell me something new. Help me laugh." And if she ever tried to tell a joke, that was a funny experience just to watch, because she would start laughing in the middle of telling the joke and couldn't finish telling it, and people were laughing at her laughing, not even able to follow the joke because she was already laughing. She couldn't wait. This was a gift that she gave to Alla and to Lena and to Marcy that they still cherish. They laughed the same way. By the end of the 1970s, Yeva and Victor knew it was time for a new stage, another layer to the matryoshka. They applied to leave the Soviet Union for the United States. It turned out to be another particle of night, another challenge to face, because Alla and her grandparents got permission to leave in 1978. But Yeva and Victor and Nella were denied because of Victor's specialized work in the factory. They thought he knew too many secrets. They were not able to come to Chicago to join Alla and her family until 1988. As you can imagine, it was a very joyful reunion after so many years apart. And part of that reunion was adding a new color to this stage of the doll. Now it was not just becoming American, but it was really living her life as Baba, as a grandmother. When Lena had been a baby, Yeva had begun her Baba career. She had helped out with the baby, she had chased the toddler around, but then she was gone to another continent. Their birthdays were just a few days apart, and so later on they were able to share a countdown to the big day. It was a kind of reconnection at age 12, after those 10 years apart, almost like a new meeting. And it was a smooth relationship. No yelling and arguing, no punishments. Any mischief that Lena or Marcy would get into was simply entertainment, another opportunity to laugh. Marcy remembers, for example, when she was only 5 or 6 years old, her grandmother was practicing English. And the English she decided to practice with Marcy were the list of swear words that the teacher had given her that she needed to know. She thought that was hilarious, having this 5 and 6-year-old saying all those words. There are many memories with their Baba of McDonald's moments, where Baba loved her coffee and her French fries, or discussing books that she had read, or shows that she had seen. Sometimes they would watch Russian concerts together, and Yeva would fill in the names of actors and actresses. She was still the teacher, but now she was teaching Russian cultural literacy. When she would babysit, she would play games with the children, cards and dominoes, though I was told she never let them win. If they were going to win, they had to earn it. Durak was particularly competitive. Marcy remembers one year in 8th grade hosting a New Year's party for the millennium. Her parents were out, and Baba was the chaperone. She gave them plenty of space to have fun in the basement, and she came down once in a while to check in as the tiny, cute Russian grandma, smiling and providing what they called gentle grandparenting. She always wanted everyone to be happy, and if giving them space made them happy, then space they got. It's clear from this stage of her life that Yeva deeply loved her family and spending time with people. She was loyal to them all the way. And just because she focused her energies on caring for Nella because Nella needed it, do not think that she ignored Alla. Alla's husband Boris told me that Yeva always looked at Alla with love and admiration. She was proud of her accomplishments and her family. She would speak about how beautiful and glamorous she was, what amazing things she had done. Allah could do no wrong. She was the best daughter in the world. In fact, sometimes it was not entirely clear who was the mother and who was the daughter, since Yeva looked up so much to Allah for advice and for help. Getting older is not easy for anyone. There were the joys of great-grandchildren Zachary and Nathan and Bellamy, but there were also the challenges of physical limitations. The loss of Victor was, of course, a blow, and so too was finally having to give up caring for Nella by herself. Yeva always did her best to keep her routines, having breakfast at the same time every day, going to the library for reading, doing her hails and her hair and her nails, making sure those were done and pristine so she could be put together well. She lived pretty well for pretty long, until the end that comes to everyone came to her this week. And now, the Matryoshka dolls of Yeva's life are all assembled and closed, one inside the other. In the future, when we look back and remember her, we can take them apart, one at a time, and we can appreciate each one and the lessons that each one taught. Always learn new things. Work hard to support the people whom you love. Find joy and laughter wherever and whenever you can. Make people happy. And love peace. Pursue peace in the home and in the world. In Hebrew, the word shalom has three meanings. It means hello and goodbye, and it also means peace. So if we say shalom today to Yenta Tokman, mother and grandmother and great-grandmother and wife and caregiver and pharmacist and teacher of German history and language and teacher of life through her life history, we can also remember all the times that she greeted us warmly with hello, all the peace she created in her family's lives. And today we say shalom, goodbye. Can I ask you all to please stand for just a moment? As I read the lines of this poem, I ask you to respond with the words, "We remember her," to each line. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, together, we remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember her. In the opening of the buds and in the warmth of summer, we remember her. In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, we remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember her. So long as we live, Yeva too shall live, for she is now a part of us as together we remember her. Let us pause for a moment of silent tribute, of love and of memory. In the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Proverbs, we read, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the memory of a good person is a blessing to us. And so it was for Yeva as well. Please be seated.
The interment will take place at Memorial Park Cemetery located in Skokie. For those of you driving to the cemetery in procession, we will be providing your cars with an orange funeral safety sticker, which will be placed in the inside portion of your front windshield on the passenger side. And for an added measure of safety, we will also be putting a magnetic flag on top of your vehicle. And please use your bright headlights and your emergency flasher lights at all times while in procession, and stay as close as safety will allow to the car in front of you, especially at the intersections. At this time, we'll ask everyone to please rise as we escort Mrs. Tokman's casket from the chapel. If any of the gentlemen here or ladies would like to serve as pallbearers, please step forward.